Some on the left are looking for something, anything to use to attack Governor Ron DeSantis in the wake of Hurricane Ian. At a briefing in St. Augustine on Friday, DeSantis said something that seemed pretty sensible to me. He warned would-be looters to think twice before looting or ransacking homes.
Don't even think about looting. Don't even think about taking advantage of people in this vulnerable situation. Because you can have people, bringing boats into some of these islands and trying to ransack people's homes. I can tell you, in the state of Florida, you never know what may be lurking behind somebody's home. And I would not want to chance that if I were you, given that we're a Second Amendment state.
Now, whether it's a Second Amendment state or not, that seems like a fair warning, but some critics, particularly on the far left, immediately sought to somehow suggest that that was racist. Most notably, MSNBC host Joy Reid, who in a tweet on Saturday compared the governor's comments to those of a notorious segregationist. Quote, "When the looting starts, the shooting starts," Reid wrote, quoting 1967 remarks made by segregationist Sheriff Walter Headley. Reid added, quote, "Didn't take DeSantis long to return to form." Headley, who is thought to have gotten the phrase from the infamous Birmingham Public Safety Commissioner Bull Connor, had a long history of racism. And he was speaking directly against protests being staged by people of color against Miami's racist policies. But that isn't the point. Reid and others on the left have been attacking DeSantis since his first press conference.
As Florida battles one of the most powerful hurricanes ever to hit the United States, Governor Ron DeSantis is, well, he's running for president. Not officially, not yet. But nothing like a disaster and national cameras to boost one's White House ambition. All he has to do now is open up his arms and receive federal money. Let's just be clear. That is the executive leadership. He's now got to go hand in hand to Joe Biden for aid.
That's right. Said like a true left-wing cable news host who isn't in Florida. Let's be clear. I disagree with Ron DeSantis on a lot of issues. I agree with him on other things. But this shouldn't be about politics. Here, Governor DeSantis is just trying to warn prospective criminals not to violate the law. And nothing he said seems remotely racist to me. But someone who disagrees with me is Nina Turner. She's a former Ohio State senator and host of a new show for the Young Turks called Unbossed. Thanks so much for coming on the show. That show begins in a couple of weeks. Appreciate it. All right, so what do you think I'm getting wrong here?
Thanks for having me, Dan. The governor has this wrong. I mean, people are suffering in Florida, Dan. Why does he have to focus in on that? There's one thing to say, please don't come here or do anything that causes more harm to people who are already suffering. If you do, there will be a consequence for that. You will be arrested and you will have your day in court. It's another thing to point out the fact that the state of Florida is a Second Amendment state, as if the entire United States is not, and put emphasis on that. To me, that whole tone is a failure of leadership, and that he's covering up his inadequacies in terms of being the type of leader in this moment of suffering that speaks to that suffering and says very clearly, I will work with the federal government to help to ameliorate the suffering of the people of the great state of Florida. That should be his focus, Dan.
So look, whether it should be his focus or not his focus, look, I think sort of talking tough against prospective looters is effective. I get that you don't agree. Excuse me. But what do you think of the allegation that it's somehow racist?
Well, who is he talking to, Dan? He used also the word law and order.
Right.
That is a dog whistle.
Oh, come on.
Really? Dan, that is historically, that has been a dog whistle.
I use the word all the time. I mean, I use the word law and order. I use the word law enforcement. I don't mean it as a dog whistle.
African Americans and other people of color. I mean, let's face it, we're talking about a governor who may have broken Texas law by helping to lure migrants out of that state to Martha's Vineyard.
But see, that's my concern.
That's who we're talking about.
Right, but that's my concern is that others on the left are just angry at DeSantis, right? You don't like DeSantis. I get that, right? Various policies.
I'm not angry. I want the people of Florida who are suffering to be taken care of, Dan.
All right.
There's nothing wrong with that. You never heard me say, don't overlay that on me.
All right, fair enough.
I don't like DeSantis.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
I do not like the fact that he is very fixated on law and order instead of dealing with people, Dan, who
Right.
are were unhoused before the hurricane hit, people
Fair
who
enough.
are in turmoil right now.
You disagree with his policies, all right? It's a fair way to say it, and you're right that I don't know, whether you like him or dislike him, but you disagree with his policies, and you certainly wouldn't support him for governor. My concern is that people who share your view and other people who actively don't like him are actually just looking for something to go after him about. And so he makes a pretty innocuous comment about trying to warn prospective looters, particularly ones coming in boats. So we're not talking about people who are robbing a Food Lion for food. He's talking about people coming over in boats and ransacking homes, and that offends you and others. And that's the part I just don't get.
I don't think that is the case. Again, this governor should be more focused on the $47 billion worth of damage and the human suffering in that state, instead of saying about he's not focused. But Dan, he's not focused on that. He didn't even have to bring that up. Why? Because we already have a system in this country in place that if somebody breaks the law, they should be arrested and have their day in court. He's stating the obvious. As far as I'm concerned, Dan, he's focused on the wrong thing.
Yeah, but again, it's amazing. If you go listen to all of his press conferences, right, he talks a lot about the suffering. He talks a lot about, and look, I'm not here to be the Ron DeSantis spokesperson. My concern is just that this is just a typical effort to divide us at a time when one of those rare times where DeSantis and Biden are working together, rare times. And instead of saying, hey, this is a good thing that they're working together. Look at this. They're both trying to do what they can. There are people out there instead who want to use this as an opportunity to just attack DeSantis again. You get the final word.
But then you don't think that Ron DeSantis is trying to divide people as well?
Right now?
You get shot. Yeah,
not in the wake of Ian. You can say
me,
other things. The migrant stunt? Absolutely.
But for me, Dan, I mean, in this particular moment, this is a time for him to use the type of leadership that shows compassion and passion towards people suffering. And if by chance somebody loots, they should be arrested and have their day in court. He didn't have to state, if you do this, you may get shot.
Right.
I mean, even President Trump, you may recall during the George Floyd protest, he was interviewed on Fox. He said something very similar about when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Right. It's just the wrong thing to do in a time of turmoil in the state.
And I guess we're going to agree to disagree, because I think at times when there is a real possibility of looting, that it's very important to warn people about the impact. But we'll just we'll leave that disagreement there. And I'll say thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate the conversation. Thanks, Nina.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.